The year was 2475, and humanity had long since joined the stars. Kepler Station Academy orbited the habitable zone of Kepler 186f, a massive educational complex hosting the brightest minds from over a dozen civilizations across the known galaxy. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, a rotating torus with artificial gravity, specialized atmospheres for different species, and cutting-edge technology that made Earth's finest universities look like primitive schoolhouses. Jimmy O'Brien pushed his cleaning cart down the immaculate corridor of the xenobiology wing, his gray coveralls blending with the metallic walls. To the Academy's students and faculty, he was just another maintenance worker, one of the many human custodial staff that kept the prestigious institution running. Most species didn't even bother to look at him twice. After all, humans weren't exactly the most impressive species in the galactic community. No telepathy, no enhanced strength, no natural bioluminescence. Just clever apes who had managed to stumble their way into interstellar travel. Jimmy preferred it that way. Invisibility had its advantages. Maintenance, he announced, knocking briefly on the laboratory door before entering. Inside, holographic displays flickered with complex molecular structures. The room was empty of students at this hour, which was precisely why Jimmy had chosen it for his rounds. With practiced efficiency, he emptied the waste receptacles, wiped down surfaces, and meticulously cleaned the holographic projectors. These particular units had been giving off distorted images for days, a fact he'd noted during his previous cleaning shift. As he adjusted one projector's alignment, his fingers moved with surprising precision for a mere janitor. A small, diagnostic panel appeared at his touch, revealing a cascade of security protocols. Jimmy's eyes narrowed. Something was off. "Interesting," he murmured, tapping through several screens. "Someone's been using this terminal to access restricted databases." The hack was sophisticated, almost undetectable, but Jimmy had seen similar patterns before, in another life. His fingers hovered over the interface, considering. With a few quick adjustments, he could trace the breach and... "What do you think you're doing?" a sharp voice demanded from behind. Jimmy turned slowly, his expression neutral as he faced a tall, purple-skinned Vorthax student. Zrextal the Magnificent, as he insisted on being addressed, stood in the doorway, his 6 eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Just cleaning the projectors, sir," Jimmy replied, his voice deferential. Zrextal snorted, a sound that emerged from his gill-like structures. "You expect me to believe that? I saw you manipulating the interface. Janitors aren't authorized to access Academy systems." "I was just wiping the screen," Jimmy said, holding up his cleaning cloth. "Sometimes dust gets in the—" "Enough!" Zrextal interrupted, striding forward. His ornate robes, indicative of his family's considerable wealth, swished dramatically. "I know what I saw. Your kind shouldn't even be touching sophisticated equipment. Do you have any idea how much these projectors cost? More than your entire species makes in a year." Jimmy resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Vorthax were known for their technological prowess and their arrogance. "I'll report this to Dr. Blackwood immediately," Zrextal continued, activating his personal communicator. "Security breach in Xenobiology Lab 7. A human custodian is tampering with equipment." Jimmy didn't protest. Instead, he calmly resumed cleaning, though his mind was racing. The security breach was concerning, more concerning than a privileged student catching him poking around where he supposedly shouldn't be. 10 minutes later, Dr. Lyra Blackwood arrived, her brisk stride and impeccable gray suit projecting authority. As the Dean of Student Affairs, she was responsible for maintaining order among the Academy's diverse student body. No small feat when dealing with species that sometimes considered each other natural enemies or, worse, potential meals. Mr. O'Brien, she said, acknowledging Jimmy with a nod. Zerextal claims you were accessing secure systems. I was cleaning the projector screens. Dr. Blackwood, Jimmy replied evenly. They've been displaying distorted images recently. I thought a thorough cleaning might help. Dr. Blackwood studied him carefully. She was one of the few humans in senior administration, and Jimmy had noticed her watchful eyes on previous occasions. Unlike most, she seemed to actually see him. Zerextal, thank you for your vigilance, she said, turning to the Vorthax student. I'll handle this matter personally. You may return to your studies. Zerextal's gill structures flared in indignation. But Dr. Blackwood, I witnessed... I said I'll handle it, she repeated, her tone brooking no argument. With a final glare at Jimmy, Zerextal departed, muttering something unflattering about humans in his native language. Once they were alone, Dr. Blackwood's expression shifted from stern administrator to something more calculating. This is the third time this month you've been reported for unusual behavior, Mr. O'Brien. Jimmy shrugged. I take my job seriously. Most custodians don't know how to access diagnostic panels on quantum holographic projectors. I'm observant. Dr. Blackwood leaned against a nearby table. Your employment records show you worked maintenance on cargo vessels before joining our staff 2 years ago. Nothing in your file suggests training in advanced systems. You learn things on cargo ships, Jimmy offered. Not much else to do during long hauls. Dr. Blackwood clearly wasn't satisfied. What were you really doing with that projector, Mr. O'Brien? Jimmy considered his options. Dr. Blackwood was sharper than most of the faculty. Dismissing her suspicions wouldn't be easy, and he needed some freedom to operate. There's a security vulnerability, he admitted finally. Someone's been using these projectors to access restricted data. I noticed the anomaly during my regular cleaning. Dr. Blackwood's eyebrows rose. And instead of reporting it, you decided to investigate yourself? Would security have listened to a janitor? You could have come to me. Jimmy smiled faintly. With all due respect, Dr. Blackwood, how do I know you're not involved? Instead of taking offense, she laughed. A short, genuine sound. Fair point. However, if what you're saying is true, we have a serious problem. Why should I believe you? Because I can prove it, Jimmy said. Someone's been accessing student files, particularly those of wealthy families. They're gathering information, patterns, schedules, security weaknesses. For what purpose? Nothing good, Jimmy replied grimly. I've seen similar patterns before. My guess, they're identifying high-value targets. Dr. Blackwood's expression hardened. That's a serious accusation. Yes, it is. She studied him for a long moment. You're not just a janitor, are you, Mr. O'Brien? Jimmy didn't answer directly. I like keeping things clean. Dr. Blackwood, some messes are just bigger than others. I could have your employment terminated for unauthorized system access, she pointed out. You could, he agreed. But then you'd never find out who's targeting your students. Another long moment passed as they assessed each other. Finally, Dr. Blackwood nodded. I'll give you 72 hours to bring me concrete evidence. If what you're saying is true, I'll overlook your extracurricular activities. If not, you're fired and possibly facing criminal charges. Understood? Perfectly, Jimmy said, returning to his cleaning cart. I'd suggest you keep this conversation between us. Whoever's behind this probably has ears everywhere. Dr. Blackwood nodded curtly and left, her mind clearly troubled. Jimmy watched her go, then turned back to the projector. 72 hours wasn't much time, but it would have to do. He'd already spotted the signature of the intrusion, a specific data pattern he'd encountered in his previous life, one associated with a particularly nasty slave trading ring. The Academy, with its collection of wealthy and important offspring from across the galaxy, was a tempting target, and someone on the inside was helping to set it up. Jimmy finished his cleaning round, pushing his cart through the corridors with the same unhurried pace as always. To anyone watching, he was just another invisible service worker. But as he moved, his eyes cataloged security cameras, patrol patterns, and potential escape routes. Old habits died hard. In his small quarters in the maintenance section, Jimmy locked the door and activated a small device hidden beneath his bed. The jamming field would prevent any surveillance, a precaution that technically violated his employment agreement. But then again, he wasn't technically just a janitor. From a concealed compartment in the wall, he retrieved a slim datapad, far more sophisticated than anything a custodian could afford. The screen illuminated with encrypted data as his fingerprints touched the surface. Authorization, O'Brien. James. Clearance, Ghost Protocol, he murmured. Status report. The datapad flickered to life, displaying a stream of information, security logs, communication intercepts, and surveillance footage he'd been quietly collecting for months. Ghost Protocol might have officially discharged him after his last mission went sideways. But they hadn't completely cut him off. He still had access to certain resources, provided he didn't attract attention. Jimmy had spent 2 years building his cover at the Academy, watching and waiting. Something had always felt off about security here. Too many blind spots, too many convenient failures. Now he had confirmation. Someone was systematically compromising the Academy's defenses. The question was who? He scrolled through personnel files he'd borrowed from the administrative database. Several potential suspects emerged, but one name kept appearing in connection with the security anomalies. Dr. Marcus Reed, Associate Dean of Interspecies Relations. Dr. Reed had access to student records, security protocols, and, most importantly, the trust of the Academy's leadership. His position would make him the perfect inside man for an operation targeting high-value students. Jimmy needed more proof before taking his suspicions to Dr. Blackwood. He set the datapad to continue monitoring communications and settled back on his narrow bed. Tomorrow, he'd need to get closer to Dr. Reed. The mess hall was crowded as always during the lunch period. Jimmy pushed his cleaning cart past tables filled with students from across the galaxy. Andromedan energy beings contained in specialized suits, methane-breathing Jovians, the insectoid Hextari, and dozens of other species, all pursuing knowledge in their own ways. He positioned himself near the faculty table, wiping down surfaces and emptying trash while keeping one ear on the conversations. Dr. Reed sat at the center, surrounded by colleagues. The associate dean was a handsome human in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and an easy smile that seemed designed to put others at ease. The exchange program with the Vega Institute is proceeding nicely, Dr. Reed was saying. We'll be sending 15 students next month, mostly third years with exemplary records. Jimmy noted the information. If someone were planning to target wealthy students, an exchange program would provide the perfect opportunity. Predictable travel plans, away from the Academy's security, however flawed it might be. As he worked his way around the table, Dr. Reed glanced up, noticing him for perhaps the first time. Maintenance, when you're finished here. My office could use attention. There was a small accident with some Tyrellian growth enzyme. Yes, sir, Jimmy replied, keeping his eyes appropriately downcast. I'll head there right after lunch service. Excellent. The door will be unlocked. Dr. Reed returned to his conversation, dismissing Jimmy from his attention entirely. It was almost too perfect, an invitation to the Associate Dean's office without having to manufacture a reason. An hour later, Jimmy entered Dr. Reed's office, pushing his cleaning cart ahead of him. The room was empty, as expected. The associate dean had mentioned a department meeting during his lunch conversation. The accident was obvious. A shattered container had left viscous green fluid splattered across one wall, already hardening into a crusty residue. Jimmy locked the door behind him and got to work. While one hand mechanically scrubbed at the stubborn residue, the other retrieved a small scanner from a hidden compartment in his cart. He ran the device over Dr. Reed's desk, chair, and computer terminal, searching for any hidden surveillance or security measures. Finding none, Jimmy activated the terminal. As expected, it requested identification and passwords. He attached a small device to the interface, another gift from his Ghost Protocol days, and watched as it cycled through security protocols. Within minutes, he had access. What he found confirmed his worst suspicions. Hidden beneath layers of encryption were communications with an outside entity, detailed information about 15 specific students selected for the Vega exchange. All came from wealthy or politically connected families. All would be vulnerable during transit. Most damning was a final message. Package secured, delivery date confirmed, payment as discussed. Jimmy quickly copied the evidence to his own device, then carefully erased all traces of his intrusion. He was replacing the terminal exactly as he'd found it when a noise at the door made him freeze. The handle turned, and Jimmy immediately returned to scrubbing the wall, his scanner and other equipment already hidden in his cart. Dr. Reed entered, looking surprised to find Jimmy still there. "Oh, you haven't finished yet." "Sorry, sir," Jimmy apologized, gesturing to the stubborn green residue. "Tyrrellian enzymes are persistent. I've almost got it, though." Dr. Reed nodded absently, moving to his desk. "Take your time. I just forgot some notes for my meeting." As the associate dean gathered his materials, Jimmy continued cleaning, careful to keep his body between Reed and the still active terminal. If Reed noticed the slight discoloration on the screen indicating a recent interface, Jimmy's cover would be blown. "Quite a mess, wasn't it?" Dr. Reed remarked conversationally as he collected a datapad. "Yes, sir," Jimmy agreed. "Happens all the time. Though, you should see what Hextari digestive fluid does to the cafeteria tables." Dr. Reed chuckled. "I imagine that's unpleasant." He paused, studying Jimmy more carefully. "You're O'Brien, correct? I believe Dr. Blackwood mentioned you yesterday." Jimmy's pulse quickened, but he kept his expression neutral. "Probably about the projector in Lab 7. I was just trying to clean it properly." Yes," Dr. Reed said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Well, carry on. And please make sure you log all maintenance activities properly in the future." "Of course, sir." After Reed left, Jimmy quickly finished his work and departed, his mind racing. The associate dean's casual mention of Dr. Blackwood's interest was a warning shot. Whether Reed was simply suspicious or knew more remained to be seen. Either way, Jimmy's window of opportunity was shrinking. That evening, Jimmy found himself face to face with Zrextal again, this time in a deserted corridor near the Vorthax dormitory section. The purple-skinned student blocked his path, accompanied by two fellow Vorthax. "Well, if it isn't the curious janitor," Zrextal said, his gill structures flaring with obvious disdain. "Still employed. I see. Dr. Blackwood must be more lenient than I thought." "Just doing my job," Jimmy replied, trying to move past. Zrextal shifted to block him. "My father sits on the board of directors for the Vorthax Technology Consortium. One communication from me. And your employment here ends." Jimmy sighed internally. Entitled rich kids were the same across the galaxy, apparently. "Is there something I can help you with, Mr. Magnificent?" The use of his preferred title seemed to please Rextal slightly. Perhaps... I'm curious about what you were really doing with that projector. You're not as simple as you pretend to be. The statement caught Jimmy by surprise. He'd expected threats, or more disdain, not perceptiveness. I told you cleaning, Jimmy insisted. Why are you so interested? Zrextal's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. A Vorthax expression of calculation. Because someone has been accessing my personal files. Academic records, family connections, financial data. And you seem to know more about the Academy systems than you should. Jimmy reassessed the situation quickly. Zrextal wasn't accusing him of the breach. He was fishing for information. I'm not your hacker, Jimmy said flatly, but I might know something about it. Zrextal dismissed his companions with a gesture. Once they were alone, his demeanor changed, the arrogance diminishing slightly. Speak human. You're not the only one being targeted, Jimmy said carefully. Several students from wealthy families have had their information compromised, particularly those selected for the Vega exchange program. Zrextal's gill structures paled slightly, the Vorthax equivalent of going white with shock. I am on that list. I know. How do you know these things? Zrextal demanded. Jimmy offered a thin smile. Let's just say I'm very thorough with my cleaning. This is serious, Zrextal insisted. If someone is targeting us. It is, Jimmy agreed, which is why I need you to do something for me. The Vorthax student drew himself up indignantly. You presume to ask me for favors. Call it mutual benefit, Jimmy countered. I need access to the central security hub, just for 10 minutes. You have the clearance to get me in there after hours. That's preposterous. Why would I risk... Because whoever's accessing your files isn't just curious about your academic performance, Jimmy interrupted. They're cataloging your movements, your weaknesses, and your value as a target. The Vega exchange program is a trap. Zrextal's 6 eyes widened. You're suggesting kidnapping? Ransom? Or worse, Jimmy confirmed grimly. Your father's position makes you particularly valuable. Zrextal was silent for a long moment, his natural arrogance warring with self-preservation. Finally, he asked, If I help you, what do you intend to do? Find proof of who's behind it and stop them, Jimmy said simply. Preferably before anyone gets hurt. And why should I trust a janitor with this? Jimmy met the alien's gaze steadily. Because I'm the only one who noticed what was happening. Another long silence followed, before Zrextal nodded reluctantly. Tonight, 2300 hours, I'll meet you at the secondary maintenance entrance to the security hub. I'll be there, Jimmy promised. As Zrextal departed, Jimmy allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes, the most unlikely allies emerge from adversity. The Vorthax student might be arrogant, but he wasn't stupid. Self-interest would ensure his cooperation, at least temporarily. Jimmy's datapad vibrated with an incoming message, a rare occurrence given his limited social circle at the Academy. The sender was unlisted, but the message was clear. Observation deck, now. Come alone. Few people had his private communication code. Fewer still would risk contacting him directly. Curious and cautious. Jimmy made his way to the observation deck, a circular room with panoramic views of the Kepler system and the vast starfield beyond. A solitary figure stood at the viewport, a slender, orange-skinned Andromedian in the environmental suit their species required in oxygen atmospheres. Kestra, one of the few Academy staff members who ever acknowledged Jimmy as more than mobile furniture. You called? Jimmy asked in, approaching quietly. Kestra turned, the faceplate of their suit refracting light in patterns that expressed emotion more effectively than facial expressions. Current pattern, concern. Jimmy! Kestra's melodious voice emerged from the suit's speakers. You're investigating the security breaches. It wasn't a question, Jimmy raised an eyebrow but didn't deny it. I work in communication routing, Kestre continued. Strange patterns have been emerging. Data packets with unusual encryption. Communications that don't follow standard protocols. Why tell me? Jimmy asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Kestre's light patterns shifted to something resembling amusement. Because you're not just a janitor. I've watched you, the way you move, the way you observe. You're trained. Jimmy remained silent, neither confirming nor denying. My species evolved as prey, Kestre explained. We recognize predators. You move like one, though you hide it well. I'm not a threat to the Academy, Jimmy said quietly. I believe you, Kestre replied. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But you should know, whatever you're tracking, it's accelerating. The communication anomalies have increased by 87% in the past 24 hours. Jimmy frowned. That suggests they're preparing to move. Yes, and there's more. Kestre handed him a small data crystal. This contains routing logs from the past week. Dr. Reed has been sending encrypted transmissions to an unlisted relay station in the Deneb sector. Jimmy took the crystal, surprised. You've been conducting your own investigation. As I said, my species evolved as prey. We learned to recognize dangers. Kestre's light patterns expressed determination. The Academy is my home. I won't let anyone threaten it. Thank you, Jimmy said sincerely. This helps. Be careful, Jimmy, Kestre warned. Dr. Reed has many allies, and I believe the Academy's security systems have been more thoroughly compromised than anyone realizes. With that cryptic warning, Kestre departed, leaving Jimmy alone with the stars and his increasingly troubling thoughts. The timetable had accelerated. He couldn't wait for his meeting with Rexdal tonight. He needed to alert Dr. Blackwood immediately. Finding her proved challenging. According to her office assistant, Dr. Blackwood was in a closed-door meeting with the Academy's senior leadership, including Dr. Reed. Not ideal, but Jimmy couldn't afford to wait. He sent her a priority message. Evidence confirmed. Reed involved. Security compromised. Exchange program is the target. Meet urgently. Within minutes, she replied, My office, 30 minutes. When Jimmy arrived at the designated time, Dr. Blackwood was alone, her expression grave. He immediately handed her the data crystal from Kestre and his own evidence. It's worse than I thought, Jimmy explained, as she reviewed the information. Dr. Reed is working with a slave trading ring based in the Deneb sector. They're targeting 15 students selected for the Vega exchange, all from wealthy or influential families. Dr. Blackwood's face paled as she scrolled through the evidence. This is monstrous. How did we miss this? Reed has administrative access to all systems, Jimmy pointed out. He's been careful, covering his tracks, without specific knowledge of what to look for. These patterns would seem like routine anomalies. And you have this specific knowledge because... Her eyes narrowed, studying him with renewed intensity. Jimmy hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. I used to work security for interstellar shipping. Pirates used similar methods to identify high-value targets. She clearly didn't believe that was the whole story, but she didn't press. What's their timeline? Based on the communication frequency, they're moving soon, possibly within the next 48 hours, Jimmy said. The exchange program transport leaves in 3 days. Dr. Blackwood stood. Decision made. I'm taking this to the Chancellor immediately. We'll cancel the exchange program, increase security, and have Dr. Reed detained for questioning. Wait, Jimmy cautioned. If Reed suspects we're onto him, he might accelerate their plans or destroy evidence. We need to be careful about this. What do you suggest? Let me access the Central Security Hub tonight. I can set up a monitoring system to track Reed's movements and communications. If we gather more concrete evidence, catch him in the act, the case will be stronger. Dr. Blackwood considered this. You're asking me to delay official action and give you unauthorized access to Academy security systems? Yes, Jimmy admitted. I know it's a lot to ask, but it's the safest approach for the students. And if I refuse? Jimmy met her gaze steadily. Then I'll find another way. But time is running out. Dr. Blackwood sighed deeply. I am probably going to regret this, but you have until tomorrow morning. After that, I'm taking everything we have to the Chancellor, regardless of how concrete the evidence is. Understood, Jimmy agreed. One more thing. Keep acting normally around Reed. If he suspects anything, the students could be in immediate danger. I'm not completely inept at subterfuge, Mr. O'Brien, she replied dryly. Though I suspect you're quite proficient. Jimmy offered a small smile, but said nothing. As he turned to leave, Dr. Blackwood added, Be careful. And remember, the safety of our students comes first. Always, Jimmy promised. The night cycle had begun by the time Jimmy met Zrextal at the designated location. The Vorthax student looked nervous, his purple skin slightly paler than usual. I still think this is madness, Zrextal muttered as he used his access card to open the service entrance to the security hub. If we're caught... We won't be, Jimmy assured him. Just keep watch and give me 10 minutes. The security hub was dimly lit, manned by a skeleton crew during night hours. Jimmy had timed their entrance to coincide with the shift change, when attention would be diverted. He slipped through shadows with practiced ease, making his way to an auxiliary terminal, while Zrextal nervously watched the door. Working quickly, Jimmy connected his datapad to the Academy's main security system. The interface responded to his access codes that no janitor should possess. He navigated through the system architecture, planting monitoring subroutines and backdoor access points that would allow him to track Dr. Reed's movements and communications. As he worked, something caught his attention. A program running in the background, quietly modifying security protocols. Someone else was already in the system, making changes. Jimmy traced the intrusion, his fingers flying over the interface. Hurry up, Zrextal hissed from the doorway. Someone's coming. Almost done, Jimmy murmured, eyes fixed on the screen. What he was seeing disturbed him deeply. The entire security system was being systematically disabled. Cameras, door locks, alarm systems, not immediately, but timed to fail in sequence, beginning in approximately 6 hours. They weren't waiting for the exchange program. They were moving tonight. Jimmy quickly finished his work, disconnected his datapad, and rejoined Zrextal. They slipped out of the security hub just as a technician rounded the corner. What did you find? Zrextal demanded once they were safely away. It's happening tonight, Jimmy said grimly. They're taking down the security systems sector by sector, starting at 0300 hours. Zrextal's gill structures flared in alarm. But the exchange transport doesn't leave until... They're not waiting, Jimmy interrupted. Something spooked them. They're accelerating their timeline. What do we do? For once, the Vorthax's arrogance was replaced by genuine fear. You need to quietly warn the other exchange students, Jimmy instructed. Tell them to gather in the central atrium at 0230 hours. Say it's a pre-departure briefing if anyone asks. Dr. Blackwood will meet you there. And you? Jimmy's expression hardened. I'm going to have a chat with Dr. Reed. After sending an urgent update to Dr. Blackwood, Jimmy made his way to the faculty residential section. According to his newly established access to the security system, Reed was in his quarters, likely making final preparations for whatever was planned. Jimmy no longer had the luxury of subtlety. He needed to confront Reed directly, confirm his suspicions, and, if possible, discover who else was involved. The operation seemed too sophisticated for just one insider. He approached Reed's quarters cautiously, aware that the associate dean might have additional security measures not connected to the main system. At the door, he paused, listening. Voices from within. Reed was not alone. "Ensure that all 15 targets are secured," an unfamiliar voice was saying. "Our clients have paid premium rates for these specimens, especially the Vorthax and Andromedan youths. The security systems will begin failing at precisely 300 hours." Reed replied, "My team will guide your extraction squad to the dormitories. The subjects will be sedated and ready for transport by Zo330. "And our payment? Half has already been transferred to your designated account. The remainder will be paid upon successful delivery." Jimmy had heard enough. He entered an override code into the door panel, another relic of his Ghost Protocol days, and the door slid open silently. Inside, Dr. Reed stood with two individuals Jimmy didn't recognize, a reptilian Sauran and a cybernetically enhanced human. All three turned in surprise as Jimmy entered. "Maintenance?" Reed recovered quickly, his voice calm despite the obvious intrusion. "This is a private residence. You have no authorization to enter." "Drop the act, Reed," Jimmy said flatly. "I know about the slave trading operation. I know you're planning to kidnap students tonight," the Sauran hissed, reaching for a weapon concealed beneath his cloak. Jimmy moved faster, drawing a compact stun pistol from beneath his coveralls and firing in one fluid motion. The Sauran dropped, temporarily paralyzed. The cybernetic human was more resilient, lunging forward with enhanced speed. Jimmy sidestepped, using the attacker's momentum to slam him into the wall, then delivered a precise strike to the junction between organic and mechanical components. The cyborg crumpled, systems temporarily overloaded. Reed backed away, his composed facade cracking. "You're not maintenance staff. And you're not just an associate dean," Jimmy countered, keeping his weapon trained on Reed. "Who else is involved?" Reed's expression shifted from fear to calculation. "You're making a serious mistake. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?" "Enlighten me!" Reed straightened, a new confidence entering his posture. "The operation you've stumbled upon is far larger than you realize. We have people throughout the academy, throughout the sector. One man can't stop this." "I'm not alone," Jimmy replied. "Dr. Blackwood knows everything. The students have been warned. Your extraction team will find an empty dormitory and a security response waiting for them." For the first time, genuine worry crossed Reed's face. "Blackwood? Impossible. She doesn't have the clearance to—" "She has everything," Jimmy interrupted. "Your communications, your plans, your contact in the Deneb sector. It's over. Reed?" Reed lunged suddenly for a panel on the wall. Jimmy fired, but too late. Reed's hand slammed against an emergency button. Alarms blared throughout the residential sector. "Security override Omega-7, Reed shouted. "Hostile intruder, faculty residential sector." Jimmy cursed. Reed had just activated a security protocol that would lock down the entire section and summon armed response teams. Teams that, Jimmy suddenly realized, might include Reed's conspirators. "That was stupid," Jimmy said, advancing on Reed. "Now you're trapped in here with me." Reed smiled thinly. "Am I? Emergency Protocol Omega-7 gives me exactly 60 seconds before security arrives. How much can you accomplish in 60 seconds, Janitor?" "More than you might think," Jimmy replied. With lightning speed, he closed the distance between them, pinning Reed against the wall. "Who else is involved? How many staff members are part of this?" Reed struggled uselessly against Jimmy's grip. "You're dead already. When security arrives..." "When security arrives, they'll find evidence of your treachery," Jimmy interrupted. "Now answer the question. Who else?" Reed's eyes, darted to the panel showing the countdown. 50 seconds remaining. You think you've won. The operation will proceed regardless. The merchandise will be delivered. Jimmy's grip tightened. They're not merchandise, they're people. They're profit. Reed spat. Do you have any idea what a young Vorthax telepath fetches on the Deneb market? Or an Andromedan energy manipulator? Millions in universal credits. 40 seconds. Jimmy slammed Reed against the wall again. Names. Now. Fear finally broke through Reed's facade. Security Chief Voss. Transportation Officer Harrell. 6 others in various departments. Please. They'll kill me if... If what? If you talk? Jimmy laughed humorlessly. You should be more worried about what will happen when those families discover you tried to sell their children. 30 seconds! Jimmy activated his datapad with his free hand. Authorization. O'Brien, James. Emergency Protocol Ghost 793. Transmitting evidence packet to Central Command. Reed's eyes widened at the authorization code. Your Ghost Protocol? But they're a myth, a story to scare criminals. Not a myth, Jimmy corrected, releasing Reed to back toward the door. And not as disbanded as some would like to believe. 20 seconds. This changes nothing, Reed insisted desperately. You can't possibly stop all of us in time. I don't need to, Jimmy replied, checking the corridor. I just needed confirmation of who's involved. The rest is already in motion. 10 seconds. Jimmy gave Reed one last look. For what it's worth, I hope they put you in a cell with a former Vorthax diplomatic hostage. I hear they're not fond of slavers. With that, he slipped into the corridor and disappeared into a maintenance shaft, just as security forces rounded the corner. The alarms continued to blare, but Jimmy was already moving through the hidden arteries of the station, making his way toward the central atrium where, hopefully, Dr. Blackwood would have gathered the potential victims. The central atrium was a massive open space at the heart of the academy, its transparent dome offering breathtaking views of the Kepler system. During day cycles, it served as a gathering place for students of all species. Now, in the artificial night, it was eerily empty, save for a group huddled near the central fountain. Dr. Blackwood had succeeded. 13 of the 15 exchange students were present, looking confused and anxious. Zarextal stood among them, his purple skin pale with stress. Dr. Blackwood herself paced nearby, communicating urgently via her datapad. Jimmy approached cautiously, scanning for threats. The alarms from the faculty section had stopped, but new ones would likely start soon as Reed's conspirators realized their plan was unraveling. Dr. Blackwood, he called softly. She turned, relief visible on her face. O'Brien, what happened with Reed? He confirmed everything, Jimmy replied, joining the group, and named his accomplices, including Security Chief Voss. Dr. Blackwood cursed under her breath. That complicates things. I've been trying to contact Chancellor Valerian, but all communications are suddenly experiencing technical difficulties. They're isolating the academy, Jimmy explained grimly. Standard procedure for a takeover. Where are the other 2 students? We can't locate them, Dr. Blackwood admitted. Saren, the Jovian, and Tila, the Hextari. Neither answered the summons. Jimmy checked his datapad, accessing the security systems through his back door. Most cameras were now offline, part of Reed's planned failure cascade, but a few still functioned. He cycled through them rapidly. There, he said, pointing to a fuzzy image of Corridor J7. Looks like they've already taken Saren. 3 figures, 2 humanoid, 1 methane breather in an environment suit. Zrextal pushed forward. We must rescue them! We will, Jimmy assured him, continuing to scan feeds. But first, we need to secure all of you. If Reed's people realize their main targets are gathered here. Too late, Dr. Blackwood said suddenly, pointing to her security monitor. Multiple armed individuals converging on the atrium from all access points. Jimmy made a quick decision. Everyone into the maintenance corridor behind the east wall. Move quietly and quickly. As the students began filing toward the hidden access panel Jimmy had indicated, he turned to Dr. Blackwood. I need you to get them to the emergency shuttles in Bay 12. It's the most defensible position, and you can contact outside help from there. What about you? She asked, clearly recognizing that he wasn't planning to join them. I'm going after the captured students, Jimmy replied. And I'm going to make sure Reed's operation is permanently shut down. Dr. Blackwood studied him intently. You really aren't just a janitor, are you? Jimmy offered a tight smile. Let's just say I have experience with cleaning up messes like this. Be careful, she said, gripping his arm briefly, before following the students into the maintenance corridor. Once they were safely away, Jimmy moved to a hidden panel in the atrium floor. Beneath it lay a small cache of equipment he'd secreted away months ago. Insurance against exactly this type of situation. Old habits, indeed. From the cache, he retrieved a compact case. Inside was not the janitor's uniform he'd worn for 2 years, but something far more sophisticated. A sleek, form-fitting suit of matte black material that seemed to absorb light. Authorization, O'Brien, James, activate Ghost Protocol suit. The material responded to his voice, flowing over his body like liquid shadow. Sensors activated, heads-up display illuminating with tactical information. The suit was an older model, officially decommissioned when he'd left active service, but he'd maintained it meticulously. It would give him enhanced strength, stealth capabilities, and protection against most conventional weapons. For the first time in 2 years, Jimmy felt whole again. Not the invisible janitor, not the discharged operative, but a ghost, doing what he was trained to do. The suit's sensors detected movement. 8 armed individuals entering the atrium from different access points. They moved with military precision, weapons drawn. Through the suit's enhanced audio, Jimmy could hear their communications. Targets not present. Atrium clear. Check the security feeds, but where did they go? All feeds are down as planned. Sweep the adjacent corridors. Jimmy smiled grimly. Perfect. They were confused and separated. He could pick them off one by one. Moving silently along the ceiling support beams, a route no ordinary human could navigate, Jimmy positioned himself above one of the intruders. The mercenary never looked up, a common tactical error. Jimmy dropped, the suit absorbing the impact as he landed directly behind the man, and rendered him unconscious with a precise nerve strike. 1 down, 7 to go. The next 2 fell similarly, isolated, neutralized, secured. By the 4th, however, they'd realized something was wrong. Teams check in, a voice commanded over their shared frequency, which Jimmy's suit was now monitoring. Echo 3, respond. Silence. All teams converge on Central Fountain. Something's wrong. The remaining 4 mercenaries regrouped, standing back to back in a defensive formation. Smart, but not smart enough. Jimmy activated the suit's optical camouflage, becoming nearly invisible to standard vision. Ghost Protocol, one of the mercenaries whispered, fear evident in his voice. It can't be. They're just stories. Stay alert, the leader snapped. Nothing's invisible to thermal scanning. They activated thermal visors, scanning the atrium methodically. Jimmy smiled behind his mask. The suit's temperature regulation would render him nearly invisible to standard thermal imaging. Nearly. But not completely. A technological limitation he'd long ago learned to compensate for. He moved to the atrium's environmental controls and disabled the heating system. Within moments, the vast space began cooling rapidly. Thermal imaging would become increasingly useless as the ambient temperature dropped. Confusion spread among the mercenaries as their visors filled with cold temperature artifacts. Jimmy struck again, taking down a fifth opponent before melting back into the shadows. "This is impossible," one of the remaining mercenaries hissed. "No one person could—" He never finished the sentence as Jimmy incapacitated him with a neural disruptor, another tool from his cache. The final two mercenaries fired blindly into the shadows, energy weapons scorching the decorative plants and furniture. Jimmy circled behind them, considering his options. Taking both simultaneously would be challenging. He needed a distraction. Accessing his datapad through the suit's systems, Jimmy activated the atrium's fire suppression system. Foam sprayed from ceiling nozzles, further disorienting the mercenaries. In their confusion, they separated slightly, just enough. Jimmy struck, taking down both in quick succession. With all 8 neutralized and securely restrained using their own equipment, he accessed the station's security grid again. The captured students were his priority now. According to the few remaining functional cameras, Reed's team had taken the 2 missing students to the shuttle bay, not the main one where Dr. Blackwood would be heading with the others, but a secondary bay used for maintenance vehicles. Time was running out. Once they got the students off the station, recovery would become exponentially more difficult. Jimmy moved swiftly through maintenance shafts and service corridors, the Ghost protocol suit enhancing his speed and strength. The secondary shuttle bay was guarded by 2 security officers, likely part of Reed's conspiracy. Jimmy didn't have time for subtlety. He emerged from a ventilation shaft directly between them, the suit's systems momentarily overclocking to give him enhanced reaction time. Before either guard could raise their weapons, Jimmy had neutralized both with precise strikes. Inside the bay, a shuttle was being prepared for departure, its engines already warming up. Through the viewport, Jimmy could see movement at least 4 figures, plus the 2 restrained students. He needed to be careful. Hostages complicated the tactical approach. Accessing the bay's control systems through his datapad, Jimmy initiated an emergency procedure. The atmospheric pressure began to fluctuate, triggering warning alarms. Not dangerous, but concerning enough to demand attention. As expected, one of the figures emerged from the shuttle to check the control panel. Jimmy was waiting. 1 quick strike, and the man was unconscious. 3 to go. The shuttle's hatch remained open as a second figure called out, "Harold? What's the problem?" When no answer came, the figure emerged cautiously, weapon drawn. Jimmy had positioned himself above the hatch, clinging to a maintenance conduit. As the mercenary stepped fully onto the bay floor, Jimmy dropped, landing silently behind him and rendering him unconscious before he could alert the others. 2 left, plus the hostages. Jimmy approached the shuttle carefully. Through the still open hatch, he could see the Jovian student, Saren, encased in a containment field that maintained his methane atmosphere. The Hextari, Tila, was similarly restrained, her insectoid limbs bound securely. Both appeared sedated but alive. The remaining 2 captors were in the cockpit, preparing for departure. Jimmy needed to end this quickly. He entered the shuttle silently, moving toward the cockpit. The door slid open automatically as he approached, revealing Dr. Reed himself and Security Chief Voss. "Departure clearance received," Voss was saying. "We'll rendezvous with the carrier ship in 30 minutes. "Excellent," Reed replied, his earlier panic now replaced with cold determination. "Once we're clear of the station, signal the others to proceed with Plan B. If we can't extract all the targets, we'll at least make example of the Academy. No witnesses, no evidence." Jimmy felt cold fury rise within him. They were planning to destroy the station after their escape, killing everyone aboard. "I'm afraid I have to cancel your flight," Jimmy announced, stepping into the cockpit. Reed and Voss spun in shock, reaching for weapons. Jimmy was faster. A neural disruptor took down Voss instantly. Reed managed to fire once, the energy bolt glancing off Jimmy's suit, before a second disruptor pulse rendered him unconscious as well. With the immediate threat neutralized, Jimmy secured both men, then turned his attention to the captured students. The sedatives used were standard, with a simple antidote available in all emergency medical kits. Within minutes, he had administered the counteragent and released them from their restraints. What happened? Saren asked groggily from within his environment suit. You were kidnapped, Jimmy explained, helping the Jovian student to his feet. But you're safe now. Can you both walk? We need to get to the main shuttle bay. Tila chittered anxiously, her insectoid language translator struggling to keep up with her distress. They were going to sell us, like animals. I know, Jimmy said gently, but it's over now. They've been stopped. As he guided the still disoriented students from the shuttle, Jimmy accessed his datapad again, checking on Dr. Blackwood's group. They had reached the main shuttle bay and established communication with Academy security forces, not involved in the conspiracy. Good news, but they weren't safe yet. Plan B, Reed had said. What exactly did that entail? Jimmy needed to find out fast. He accessed the station's main computer through his Ghost Protocol clearance, a violation of about a dozen regulations, but necessary under the circumstances. What he found chilled him to the bone. A destruct sequence had been initiated in the station's reactor core, set to detonate in 15 minutes. Reed's no witnesses plan was already in motion. Change of plans, Jimmy told the students urgently. We need to get to the reactor control room immediately. The central reactor that powered Kepler Station Academy was a marvel of engineering, a controlled quantum singularity housed within multiple containment fields. Under normal circumstances, it was one of the safest power sources in the galaxy. But if the containment fields were deliberately disabled in sequence, which was exactly what Reed's program was doing, the resulting explosion would vaporize the entire station. Jimmy led the two rescued students through maintenance corridors at a rapid pace, his mind racing. Disabling the destruct sequence would require administrator-level access, which he didn't have. But there might be another way. I need to get you both to safety first, he told Saren and Tila as they approached a junction. Through this passage is a direct route to the main shuttle bay. Dr. Blackwood and the others are waiting there. What about you? Saren asked, his methane-breathing apparatus wheezing with exertion. I'm going to stop the reactor meltdown, Jimmy replied grimly. Tila's translator chittered frantically. Meltdown? The entire station is in danger? Yes, which is why you need to hurry, Jimmy urged. Tell Dr. Blackwood what's happening. She needs to begin evacuation procedures immediately, just in case. After ensuring the students knew the route, Jimmy turned toward the reactor section. According to his datapad, he had 11 minutes remaining before catastrophic containment failure. The reactor control room was locked down, emergency protocols automatically sealing it when the destruct sequence initiated. However, maintenance access tunnels ran alongside it, providing alternative entry points for repair crews during critical situations. Jimmy accessed one such tunnel, crawling through the narrow space until he reached a maintenance panel adjacent to the main control room. Through a small viewport, he could see that the room was empty. Whoever had initiated the sequence had already fled. Using tools from his suit, Jimmy bypassed the panel's security and entered the control room. The main display showed the destruct sequence in progress, containment fields systematically failing, one after another. 9 minutes remaining. Jimmy went to the main console and attempted to abort the sequence. As expected, it required administrator authorization, which he didn't have. Hacking the system would take too long. He needed another approach. The Ghost Protocol suite included specialized hacking tools, but they were designed for field operations, not overriding station-wide destruct sequences. However, Jimmy had learned long ago that sometimes the best solution wasn't the most elegant. Instead of trying to stop the sequence through the computer, he focused on the physical containment systems themselves. Each field generator had manual overrides, fail-safes designed to maintain containment even if the computer systems failed. 8 minutes. Jimmy accessed the maintenance subsystems, locating the physical layouts of all 7 containment field generators. If he could manually reinforce even 3 of them, the destruct sequence would fail. The quantum singularity would remain stable. He moved quickly to the first access point, using his suit's enhanced strength to remove the heavy shielding panel. Inside was a complex array of quantum circuitry. Following the emergency protocols he'd memorized during his Ghost Protocol training, Jimmy rerouted the power flows, bypassing the computer controls and engaging the manual locks. 1 down, 2 to go, 6 minutes remaining. The second generator was on the opposite side of the control room. As Jimmy worked on its circuits, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Dr. Blackwood had initiated the evacuation. Good. Even if he failed, people would have a chance to escape. 5 minutes, second generator secured. The third generator was located beneath the control room floor. Jimmy removed the access panel and dropped into the maintenance crawlspace. The heat was intense here. The failing containment fields were already allowing energy to leak from the singularity. 4 minutes. The circuitry in this generator was more complex, designed with additional redundancies. Jimmy worked methodically, his suit protecting him from the rising radiation levels as he bypassed the sabotage controls. 3 minutes. A surge of energy suddenly pulsed through the system, shorting out part of the circuitry Jimmy was working on. The suit absorbed most of the electrical discharge, but the shock still left him momentarily dazed. 2 minutes. Focusing through the pain. Jimmy completed the final bypass. The generator hummed as manual containment engaged. On the status display above, the destruct sequence continued to count down, but the physical containment fields were now operating independently of the compromised computer system. 1 minute. Jimmy climbed back to the control room and checked the readings. The 3 manually secured containment fields were holding. If his calculations were correct, they would be sufficient to prevent a catastrophic failure. 30 seconds. The remaining containment fields began failing in sequence, just as programmed. Energy readings spiked dangerously as the quantum singularity reacted to the partial collapse of its containment. 10 seconds. Jimmy braced himself, the Ghost Protocol suit automatically maximizing its protective functions. If he was wrong about the minimum containment requirements. 0. The reactor surged, the partially collapsed containment fields allowing a controlled energy release. The station shuddered violently, emergency systems wailing. But the manually secured fields held firm, preventing the chain reaction that would have led to total destruction. The destruct sequence had failed. Jimmy accessed the station's status reports through his datapad. Significant damage to several sections, but structural integrity was maintained. Most importantly, the evacuation shuttles had launched successfully. The students and most of the staff were safe. As emergency response teams would soon converge on the reactor section, Jimmy knew it was time to disappear again. His brief return to Ghost Protocol operative status needed to end. The official investigation would raise too many questions about his presence and capabilities. He made his way back through the maintenance tunnels, returning to his hidden cache in the atrium. The Ghost Protocol suit was carefully repacked, his janitor's coveralls donned once more. By the time security teams swept through the area, Jimmy O'Brien would just be another maintenance worker caught up in the emergency. 3 days later, Kepler Station Academy was slowly returning to normal. The damage from the reactor incident had been contained, repairs were underway, and students were returning from their emergency evacuation. The attempted kidnapping and subsequent sabotage had been officially attributed to criminal elements exploiting security vulnerabilities, a sanitized version of events that protected the Academy's reputation while avoiding mention of the specific students targeted. Dr. Reed, Security Chief Voss, and 6 other conspirators had been taken into custody by galactic law enforcement, charged with attempted kidnapping, sabotage, and conspiracy to commit mass murder. The slave trading ring they'd been working with was now the target of a sector-wide investigation. Jimmy continued his rounds, pushing his cleaning cart through the corridors as if nothing had changed. To most, he remained invisible, just another human janitor maintaining the prestigious institution. But not to everyone. "Mr. O'Brien," Dr. Blackwood called, approaching him in a quiet corridor. "A moment of your time?" Jimmy stopped, nodding respectfully. "Of course, Dr. Blackwood." She glanced around to ensure they were alone. "The official investigation is concluding tomorrow. Your name appears nowhere in the reports, as requested." "Thank you," Jimmy said simply. "Ghost Protocol has officially disavowed any involvement," she continued, her voice low. "Though a representative did contact me privately to discuss security improvements for the Academy." Jimmy raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "They suggested creating a new position, Director of Campus Security," Dr. Blackwood explained. "Someone with unique qualifications. Someone already familiar with our systems and personnel." Sounds reasonable," Jimmy commented neutrally. "The position would, of course, require maintaining a certain low profile. The effectiveness of security often depends on not being noticed until needed." Jimmy smiled faintly. "Like a good cleaning service." "Precisely." Dr. Blackwood returned the smile. "The Chancellor has approved the position, reporting directly to me. It comes with appropriate clearances, access, and resources." "And who will fill this position?" Jimmy asked, though he suspected the answer. "Officially, it remains vacant for now. Unofficially," she handed him a small data crystal. "Everything you need is here. Your custodial duties would remain your public role, but you'd have authorization to implement whatever security measures you deem necessary." Jimmy considered the offer. It was, in many ways, perfect. A chance to continue his work, protecting the Academy and its students, while maintaining the anonymity he'd grown comfortable with. "What about Ghost Protocol?" he asked. "Won't they object to one of their former operatives setting up shop here?" Dr. Blackwood's expression turned wry. "Funny thing about that. According to official records, you were never part of Ghost Protocol. In fact, Ghost Protocol itself doesn't officially exist." Jimmy chuckled. "Convenient." "Indeed." She grew serious again. "The Academy needs you, Jimmy. After what happened, the students need to know someone is watching out for them, even if they don't know who it is." Jimmy took the data crystal. "Decision made. I accept on one condition." "Which is?" "My cleaning supplies budget gets doubled," he said with a straight face. "Quality mops are essential for station security." Dr. Blackwood laughed, a genuine, relieved sound. "Done." As she walked away, Jimmy pocketed the crystal and resumed pushing his cart. The familiar weight of the Ghost Protocol suit, hidden in a compartment beneath the cleaning supplies, was reassuring. A reminder of who he was and what he could do when needed. He might just be a janitor to most of the Academy, but that was exactly why he was so effective. Invisibility had its advantages, and sometimes the most important cleaning happened in the shadows. Kestri approached, as Jimmy was restocking a supply closet later that day. The Andromedian's light patterns expressing what Jimmy had come to recognize as amusement. "So," Kestra said quietly, "the custodial engineer remains—" Jimmy nodded. "Someone has to keep the place clean." "Indeed." Kestra's patterns shifted to something more serious. "I've been thinking about what happened. About how none of us noticed what was happening right under our olfactory sensors." "Reed was careful," Jimmy pointed out. "And he had help." "Still," Kestra insisted, "we should have been more vigilant, more aware of our surroundings and each other." Jimmy raised an eyebrow. "What are you suggesting?" "A student security awareness group," Kestra explained. "Nothing official, Just students from different species learning to watch out for each other. Perhaps with some basic self-defense training. Sounds worthwhile, Jimmy agreed. Though you'd need someone to coordinate it. Someone with experience. Kestra's light patterns brightened. The equivalent of a smile. I was hoping you might have suggestions. Perhaps some maintenance tips? Jimmy smiled back. I might know a thing or two about maintaining security. Just basic stuff, of course. Of course, Kestra agreed, the playful patterns returning. Nothing too sophisticated for a simple custodial engineer. As Kestra departed, promising to organize the first meeting soon. Jimmy reflected on how much had changed while appearing to remain the same. His cover was intact. But he now had allies. People who saw beyond the gray coveralls to the person beneath. Zrextal was the most surprising development. The once arrogant Vorthax student had sought Jimmy out the day after returning to the station. His usual haughtiness notably diminished. O'Brien, Zrextal had said, 6 eyes, blinking in what Jimmy now recognized as embarrassment. I owe you an apology, and my gratitude. Jimmy had simply nodded, continuing to mop the floor, as if they were having the most ordinary conversation. My father has been informed of what transpired, Zrextal continued. Not everything, of course, but enough. He was disturbed by how close we came to disaster. Understandable, Jimmy had commented. The Vorthax Technology Consortium has relationships with many of the corporations that utilize slave labor in the Deneb sector, Zrextal admitted, gill structures darkening with shame. I never considered where our prosperity came from. Never questioned it. Jimmy had stopped mopping then, giving Zrextal his full attention. And now? Now, I intend to question everything, the Vorthax declared, beginning with our supply chains and labor practices. My father has granted me authority to conduct a full audit upon my graduation. That's impressive, Jimmy had said, genuinely surprised. Zrextal's gill structures had pulsed with determination. You showed me that true worth isn't measured by titles or wealth, but by one's actions when facing injustice. I have much to learn. O'Brien, perhaps you could teach me more about seeing what others miss. And so another unlikely alliance had formed. The privileged Vorthax scion, learning humility and awareness from a human janitor. As Jimmy completed his rounds that evening, he paused at the observation deck, where everything had started with Kestra's warning. The stars beyond the viewport were as magnificent as ever. The Kepler system's red dwarf star, casting its warm glow across the station. From this vantage point, Jimmy could see several of the Academy's sections, the dormitories where students from across the galaxy pursued knowledge, the laboratories where new discoveries were made daily, the communal spaces where different species learned to understand each other despite vast biological and cultural differences. It was worth protecting, worth remaining in the shadows for Jimmy O'Brien, former Ghost Protocol operative, current custodial engineer, and newly appointed unofficial director of campus security, picked up his mop and continued his rounds. The station wasn't going to clean itself, after all. And sometimes, the most important messes were the ones no one else could see.